I love it. I love it. All right. Welcome to the Purest Sport Moment podcast. Anthony, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thanks, Don.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. Like we're kind of like a longtime friend now. Like always like talking about stuff. So I love to have you on the podcast. Bianca, always a pleasure. Always. I know it's early in the morning. It's our earliest podcast ever. So like 10:30 in the morning. That's how like slam my schedule is right now. So all right, cool. So Anthony, I know like what kind of, I know you did track when you were like younger. I don't know. Like nobody does track when he's like older. So I'm guessing you're just running right now because track is like the thing you don't.
Nobody does track when you're older. What does that mean? You can play pickup basketball when you're 50, but you can't run around a track? That's not true.
No, but I mean, like, you're not sprinting. Nobody's
Whoa. My legs are still... Whoa, now. Hold on. I still got sprint in these legs. No, I'm just messing with you. But yeah, no.
Are you training?
No, I'm not training right now. I wish I could say
That's
that.
what I mean.
Yeah, but I'm still fresh, though. See, that's the difference. Like, everybody else wore their bodies out. It was like this dude... Prime Objective that was from the DC area. He played on the N1 tour back in the early 2000s. And Lonnie's, he was 38 and he was still like on the tour, and the dude was so springy, he would have like posterizing dunks at like 38. So, I mean, you know how it goes. Like, you can still be springy when you're older. Come on now.
That's good. So what sport did you play when you were like younger? Let's say growing up, like a teenager?
Yeah. So I was I wear my emotions on my sleeve. So I'm either the love it or hate them kind of person, meaning you're down by 7 goals, 7 points, whatever, with no time left to make it up. And I'm going to be the one like running around screaming, thinking you can always come back. So I was a team sport athlete, captain, stuck in a individual sport person's body. I did everything growing up. I mean, at the youngest age, starting as an athlete, I mean, I played basketball, I played soccer. People always wanted to play baseball. I had a good arm, but guess what? I was a scaredy cat and afraid to get hit by the ball, so that didn't happen. But I mean, I did everything. Played flag football. I was a great flag football athlete. My parents had a coach who had played D1 at Clemson. His son was also a really good athlete, and pulled my parents aside and said, "Never let him play down in football, even though he's talented. Just don't do it. Like he doesn't have the body for it. It's just not going to be a good long-term decision." And I mean, he really thought I had some talent. I mean, I ended up being 6 feet, and I don't think I would have been an elite athlete. But anyways, at a very early age, I got specialized in track and field. So around 10 years old, I started competing at a very high level, USA track and field, AAU, and kind of went down that track. So from about like
10,
12, 13, yeah.
So 9 in America. Like 10 years old, going track. Like,
well, but the difference was like I was specialized, but I was still. My parents like weren't pushing me like, oh, that's the only thing you can do, and I had a natural affinity for it. Like I was just highly competitive. I was still playing other team sports up until high school. I went to an extremely competitive high school where, unfortunately, like. If you want to play a varsity sport, you're not going to get it. You're not going to be able to play unless you're fairly, pretty darn competitive. So by 13, 14, I was. Yeah, I was a very good miler. Like looking back, I had incredibly competitive mile times. Then I got more in an 800 lane because of my coach in high school. That's not what I would have been at a higher level. That's what I ended up doing. But it was just a passion. I loved running.
800 is a pain. Like it's so tough, like because you're like it's not like cardio, like but it's like a sprint, like in between, and like you're long, you just want to die when you finish a 800.
Well, to your point, I think for a quote unquote team sport person, I was always so jealous of the dang people who were in the field. I'm like this cat gets to do the 100, 200, 4x1, 4x2, like long jump, triple jump. Like, this is ridiculous. I'm sitting around playing spades for 7 hours, and then I get to like, after I run my 4x8, maybe do another 400 and 800. But yeah, but I think for somebody that is has that like team sport mentality, if you will, that grueling, tenacious aspect of the 800 is perfect for me because I felt like there was enough strategy and sprint. Funny enough, my wife was an 800 runner, and that's how we met in college. So yeah, I mean,
and she beats you in marathon. She beats
you
in marathon.
We're not supposed to tell the world that part. Yeah, it's true. No,
we're not talking to the world. We're just talking like this. Like we're just like three friends.
no, I'm teasing. Hey, man, listen. Beyond the fact that women are like the best athletes in the world, no, my wife is a badass. I got toasted at my wedding to her beating me in the Boston Marathon, and she ended up hurting her hamstring a couple years ago when we were doing marathons, but she would have been a sub 3 hour marathoner, which is very solid. And the hilarious part is we all ran, as I mentioned, we ran track in college. Big, huge group of us. That's one reason I love track as a sport versus say like basketball. I mean, it's a close sorority or fraternity, but you're traveling with this huge team. And we were 2 years apart, so we had this massive network. And one of our friends, we ran the Chicago Marathon, and there's a bunch of us running, and one buddy had just started running. He's like very competitive. And you know how they have like random moments they take photos in races? Well, literally the exact moment that Julia passed our friend was when they took this photo, and it's priceless because she's one step in front of them. But here's the even better part. She placed top in her age and as a woman. So she has a plaque, and it's of her passing our friend. Looking so defeated. I mean, like you couldn't like script this. Talk about like pure sports moments. Like literally her beating our friend. So that's something we laugh about to this day. I mean, it's all in good fun. But
I was going to say, please tell me that you send him that photo every year on the anniversary of that marathon.
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah.
I'm in your club actually. Not in the exact club, but like my wife actually is like she's the better athlete, and I know she's not listening to this podcast, so I just don't care. So she's the better athlete.
Come on.
Yeah, I know. She despises like all like English stuff. So she doesn't like she's really like francophone. So she speaks French and English, but she's like French and Spanish. So if I do this podcast in Spanish, which will be like awful, like she might be listening just to crack at me. But she's the better athlete of the better like physical like specimen of the family. She's like our Serena Williams of the family. She's like just like too much. Like I'm more of a artistic like basketball guy. So we didn't play a lot of like one-on-one because she didn't like to play against me because she's like a real good like defender. So she could actually stay a bit in front of me. But because I'm so skilled, I always like do like the like some moves like and a taller too. So she like that's not a good move, and you did it. And then we started dating, and then I think like 1 month after that, I was like, all right, let's stop that one-on-one stuff. Like we're not gonna do one-on-one anymore. But she's a real good athlete though.
Athletes that can train together stay together.
So that's definitely a question for both of you. You know, when finding your partner. Like was them being an athlete part of it? Because you can share that experience with them, right? Like, you know, Anthony, as you said, you guys went to the same school, but you also did the same sport. Like, you know, how was that in finding a partner? Is that like definitely a plus up in terms of, right, you train together, you understand the mentality?
Yeah, I think so for some people. I mean, it depends on personalities. I mean, we not only did the same sport, we were in the same group. We both ran the 800. We had different coaches, but you have this identifying bond, so it's separate and together. And the running joke that I always give is, you know, my undoing as an athlete, which is the worst thing, was just the tiny little things that add up to being elite. I wasn't always the best listener. Julia is like the most efficient human being. Like she's going to do how she's instructed. Like that makes her be the animal that she is over top of her given skills. But so every time she'd do a warm down lap, like I was still curling the ball and she'd be like, would you like to warm down with me? And I'd say, no. And then she'd do another lap and she'd say, you want to warm down time? I'm like, no. And then she'd do a third lap and I'm like, all right, I'll do it because it's you. So, you know, but yeah, you have that identifying like bond. And I mean, when like we were marathon training, those are some of our like biggest, like grittiest moments ever. Like you're on 20-mile runs together and you're not feeling it and somebody's not into it. Yeah. You're going to find a whole lot out about yourself and the other person. So yeah, I think so for sure.
Yeah. For myself, it's different though. Like as soon as we got together, I was like kind of like, she was like the like elite athlete when she was like really young. So really young. She was so like such an athlete when she was like high school. So she was like on all like Team Quebec, like nearly Team Canada, like she was like big time like growing up. And I was just like this skinny kid. Like I passed over one group age when I was young at school, but because of that, like I passed over one grade. But because of that, like in school, I was always like 16 playing against like 18-year-old and stuff like that. So I was not like categorized as a good athlete for like a long time. But when we met, actually, that's when we kind of like our trajectory like kind of crossed. That I kind of like, okay, now I'm picking up like everything. Now like everything's like getting together. And I was like, you can attest to that a bit, Bianca and Anthony. I was kind of crazy. Like I'm obsessed as a basketball player, and she was not having it like on the training side. So we like go to train like together. So as a couple, just like, okay, and after like 30 minutes, she was like, all right, I'm done. Or what you doing right now? Oh, I'm starting my ball handling skills. Do you want to come in? It's like, all right, cool. And she's after 5 minutes, she's like, what is this? What is this? That's like too complex. That's because I was like really creative and stuff like that. And she was like, all right, I'm out. And I would stay like in the gym for like 2 hours, and she would go back and studying. And she's in med school right now. She went to med school. She's a doctor, so she's more of she's my serious part. So all the craziest that I am, she's like the serious part. So even like basketball, she was more of the kind of like go to practice and stuff like that, and I'm more of let's do my thing on my own. Let's do like this. So it's really like different from that point of view. But the thing, to answer your question, Bianca, for me, like it was mostly like we play together. Like we play all the time together. We play like we used to play a lot before the kids play a lot of tennis together. So I learned she kind of learned tennis. Like I was pretty good player like tennis. I'm pretty good at every sport that you put in front of me.
Okay, Dom. Okay.
I'm just things.
You're an athletic guy. We get it.
Dom's like, hey, I'm gonna throw me in the skeleton. Put me in the water. Doesn't matter. I got it.
Put me in an F1 car.
I did play. I hate all the like swimming stuff. I don't like it. But I did like water polo. So I did play water polo until one girl, actually, we were playing co-head, and one girl like really like squeezed my part like under the water, and that was like, what are you doing? So like, that's the first time I learned that in water polo, like people were like kind of mean underwater, and I was like, this is not happening for me. And I was like, all right, I'm bailing out. And
does this mean like Spotify is going to put like an MA rating on this pod now?
100%. 100%.
That's how you
have to see that.
That's how you draw it.
And going back to the tennis, she didn't know like how to play tennis at all, but I really enjoyed tennis. I thought it was a cool kind of hobby thing. Like, so I never took it that seriously, but I was like okay player. She learned with me, actually. She just learned like the game with me, and now like we could actually like exchange a lot. So that's kind of the cool thing, because I'm a player. Like I play stuff. Like I don't do the training like running. I hate running, but she loves like going running, and she always like, come and run with me. It's the worst. Like every time I go run with her, and she can attest to that. She won't say it, but it is the same when we go cross country skiing. Like, I always say to her, yeah, go ahead. I'm going to do my thing. She's like always running, and only like, I don't know about you, Anthony, but she always running like 5 meters or like 3 meters like in front of me, just in front of me. And just like, so she has a way better cardio than me, way better for like ever. So, and I always told her like, I don't want to run with you. And she's like mad at me, but I say, I'm going to run with you when you're going to play chess with me, because I love chess. And she hates chess, so I'm like, all right, cool.
So Dom, I got a story for you and Bianca that I think you'll like. To be a solid segue. So you mentioned being like skinny athlete growing up. So I'm going to age myself. Do you both happen to remember a little thing called AOL Instant Messenger? Do you ever use that?
Do I ever? That username will haunt me for the rest of my days.
Well, there you go. Well, see, my username was rpacers. And that was like my identity for a while. The reason it was R Pacers was the R was for Reggie, Pacers for Pacers. I was a huge Reggie Miller fan. And the reason I was a Reggie Miller fan is like literally straight up. See, I was ahead of my time. I didn't like the Pacers as the Pacers. I like Reggie Miller. And Reggie had like, bigger ears, small head, tall, lanky dude, couldn't really dribble, had to come off the shot. Like, I self-identified Reggie Miller. That was my dude. So I was kind of laugh looking back, like our Pacers was my identity for like 20 years. Kids can't. I mean, it's it's all transferable now. But yeah, man, when you talked about being skinny, I kind of thought about that. Reggie Miller, that was my guy. Our Pacers.
Yeah.
What was your screen name, Bianca?
Oh God. Embarrassingly, and so surprised to no one, it was NC Hockey Chick 14. NC was the town I grew up in. Obviously played hockey, and then 14 at the time was my number. But it's funny that you talk about, thinking back to what you were like as an athlete, like as a kid. Like if as girls typically grow quicker than boys, and I remember being, 10 years old in a classroom and not only talking about, me standing above the boys, but one day in math class, and I'll never forget this, our teacher went around and asked everybody our weights to actually kind of do like a mean, median, and mode thing. And now you could never ask a woman what her weight is in a classroom. But all of these girls are saying, 50, 60, and I'm here like 75 because I'm an athlete. I'm playing hockey. My quads are the size of like the track boys' arms, right? Like, actually, that's really tiny. But,
Yes, they're tiny, Bianca. It's true.
I pole vaulted in high school and college, so I can relate. But so I remember sitting there and then lying because I was like, is this right? And as a young athlete, you're trying to figure out how your body fits into your sport. And for someone like in your case, Anthony, runners are typically quite thin, quite small, and then you have someone like myself who's in the field, right? Who for my main sport, it's better to have bigger legs, but for this sport, you want that quick twitch muscle. You don't want that slow twitch muscle, especially if you're doing something like pole vault or the 4x4, which is what I was doing. How do you think, when you're talking about our pacers and your body type and finding that in other athletes, how do you think that shaped you not only as an athlete, but understanding how you fit in your sport?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd zoom out a little bit on it and say that, just going back to talking about being a quote like team sport athlete and my mentality being stuck, or not stuck, but like playing an individual sport. And there's different dynamics to it. In the same way, like I love to lift. Like, right now I'm probably my skinniest form, but to your point, like I can put on weight within a certain range fairly quickly in terms of muscle. It didn't, like, as a runner, like in body type and the events that I was competing in. Yeah, I think to a certain degree, often you can take on also the kind of embodiment of that aspect of who you are. And I was always a mismatch in that way. Like early on, like I'd literally be laughed off in the gym because I could barely put like a little plate on the side, maybe do a 45-pound rep on the bench, But then as I got into my body and I realized I had a lot of strength, like I love to lift. And like that really wasn't that compatible with running the 800. So no, I think there's a lot to that. And I think there's a lot of components of that too that carries forward and to the point of where we are today in terms of fandom and fan experience. That's why people identify with individual athletes to a certain degree, right? For a lot of reasons. There are two components, especially team sports. There's the performance in whatever arena it is, and you have each of the individuals that contribute to it, and you have the individual. And you're going to identify generally with somebody on probably an individual level, and then you identify on a greater level. And a lot of that gets into the embodiment of who you are, who you want to be, who you're trying to express. I think it's really interesting. There's a lot of dynamics to that aspect of being an athlete and even being a fan for that matter, all wrapped into one.
So before we finish the intro, because this is like the intro of the podcast right now, like because we're not into our usual podcast stuff, but I kind of expect that with Anthony today. Since you're talking about all kind of sports, okay, I'm gonna shoot you a curveball a bit, and like Pure Instinct is like it's like 6 people on the field. So give me your best 6 athletes, all time, all sport, woman, man. I want it now.
Holy cow! Listen,
and Reggie Miller cannot be included.
Why not?
Come on now.
I love Reggie, but I wouldn't put Reggie in the top 6. That's such a loaded question because I think when you get into, you're asking for greatest athletes, like as an athlete from a performance perspective. Give me the qualification.
You could take it kind of also the Herb Brooks route, which is not necessarily the 6 top athletes, but the 6 athletes you would want by your side.
Yeah, it's one way to look at it. I mean, I think just quickly off the top of my head, I mean, an athlete like Serena Williams. I mean, I look at Serena, somebody who's been so dominant in her sport, redefined what the sport is about, to the point of body type, not the typical body type that played women's tennis historically. She's an athlete. I mean, just in its just purest form. Obviously an outlier. To be honest with you, he's not my favorite. No offense, Usain. Favorite track athlete of all time, but I mean, I look at Usain Bolt the same way. I mean, Usain Bolt, it just doesn't even make sense. The way the dude came along and shattered the 100-meter record. He's 6 foot, whatever he is, 3 or 4 on tape. Yeah, 5, I guess technically. You always add a little bit, right? That's how it works. But just like his stride and the physics to it,
What do you say is not your favorite athlete? Is it because you're a Donovan Bailey Canadian guy?
Well, I was going to ask you if I'm being adopted by Canada, because I feel like I'm vibing with you all, but no, not because I'm a Donovan Bailey guy. I was a Michael Johnson guy. That's my dude. Gold shoes. But I think Usain, as an athlete, more fits into that top 6. Michael Phelps, how could you leave Michael Phelps off the list? I mean, the guy has nobody will ever touch his record. And I think you gotta again. I
could let him out though.
Don't leave him out. He's my list. You can't leave him out of my list. And then LeBron. Not ready to say LeBron's the greatest NBA player of all time. But again, if you're looking at it from an athlete perspective, it's yet again another athlete that completely redefined their sport. So I think male or female, you go down that line of those athletes that fit in that group, and that's how I would qualify it. I mean, at the end of the day, who's somebody that redefined how their sport was played, especially based on their athletic capabilities.
You still got 2 to go.
I got 2 more?
That's 4. Yeah, that's 4. That's easy.
That's easy. Okay. Well, Tiger Woods, for that matter, same thing.
Okay.
Redefined his sport. Upper body strength. Everybody started crushing it in the gym because of Tiger. Besides that, he brought that Tiger swagger. And this isn't one that's probably make a lot of people happy because of the individual, but separate the individual from the athlete. A Floyd Mayweather. I think Floyd Mayweather is one of the greatest technicians and athletes to ever play a sport like boxing. Again, separate the athlete from the individual. So that'd probably be my 6. But I mean, honestly, I can give you top 10, female or male, and that's what I would look for. Somebody that just completely and utterly transcends their sport as an athlete. That's how I define my top.
I'm gonna throw you a slider before we ask you about your purest sports moment. About those athletes, because as a Canadian right now, oh no, you actually went international with Usain Bolt. Okay, that's cool. Because Usain Bolt is in your top 6. Is that it?
Yeah, I mean he is. Yeah, he's absolutely.
Okay, perfect. All right, you went international because that's one of the things I wanted to have one woman and one international in every top 6. So because I think sometimes we forget about international, but he's Jamaican, so that's perfect. So now that we kind of finishing the intro and that we know exactly who you are and stuff like that, tell me your purest sports moment. And when I think about the purest sports moment is about going back in the days. What is the moment you this is so nice. This is sport for me. This is just and not you in the stadium. I'm talking about you doing the activities.
Well, that was going to be my question. So it's you as the athlete versus you as the fan. Because I think those are 2 different pure sport moments. For sure, in our intro we talked about the fact that I was a runner, a competitive runner at a young age. For me, it was. Bianca talked about this. It's the 4x4. So I ran on a 4x4 when I was 13, 14 years old, that we made it to nationals. So we were in the national competition out in Iowa at Drake. And I'll define it a little bit different why it was a pure sport moment. So I was actually recruited to be on this 4x4. I was running independently outside of a track club. And an amazing coach, I wish I'd been my coach my entire life, had spotted me and came up and said, hey, we're looking, we need one more. We need one more to be elite and take the next level. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah. So I joined the team. We meshed quickly. We were badass 4x4. We ended up making nationals, and I was the second leg in the 4x4. This is not somebody that, even at that age, that was like not used to running on a big stage. And we were in the lead in the prelims, and I do not know what happened, but I tripped on the inner rail, and I mean I took a bad fall, and I was able to. I mean, and luckily for whatever reason, I don't know why the rules applied this way in this particular. We weren't DQ'd with the baton leaving my hand and going out of the lane. So I was able to collect myself, pick it up, and finish, and we still qualified last out of the prelim and the trials. So for me, that's a pure sport moment because it defined me as somebody who failed, but then still, even though, and I was badly, and we didn't end up finishing in the end the way we wanted to, but it was pure in that way, right? It's not the pure of hitting the shot that's the game winner, or the pure where everything came together. It came together in a different way where I knew, I think, downstream in my life that I had that ability to overcome something that, you're just not going to expect. I could have just given up. I could have just sat there and said, that's it. But I finished it.
I love it. I love it. Did you happen to actually miss the passing of the baton like one time? Oh, you call that? Don't you have an English word for the baton?
It's baton.
That's not an English word.
We steal from the French all the time, and we're fine with it.
All the time.
Yeah.
Like I can't. I'm tired of it. Like. Don't you guys have like a bon appetit? Like you don't have a word for bon appetit. That like pissed me off. Like go get your own words. But like okay, have you ever dropped the baton?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure, 100.
It's crushing.
Yeah. It's crushing. Yeah, you got to get in that zone. I think everybody's. Well, there's some people that are perfect, I guess, but no, I mean, for sure, I've had that moment. I've dropped a baton before.
Nothing hurts like that noise.
Go on your purest sports moment as a fan, because I always forget about that, because one thing about me, I'm not a fan of sport that much. I'm more of a guy who just like love to just listen to sport, but I rarely just go like the only time I did that in the past 10 years was when Kawhi Leonard actually hit that crazy buzzer beater over Toronto over 76ers, like a 7-game of the conference final. I was like, whoa, what happened? And that's the only time my wife was like, are you okay? But yeah, I know a lot of people have their purest sports moment as a fan. So what is yours?
Do. Yeah, and see, that's why I asked that question, because the way that I express my fandom in particular, and the way that it defines who I am, is very different in a lot of ways from being an athlete. Like I can watch any sport and be entertained. I mean, give me darts, right? I'm not knocking anything. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
But I am so competitive, and I actually fear this in a way of being, there are realities to age, and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, yes, you can crush it when you're 70, but you're probably not keeping up with, Serena in her prime. But like, I have such a hard time watching in-person sports and not wanting to just do it and take over. Like, it's a real problem for me. But it's the love or hate it type of thing, especially if you're American. It doesn't matter, global. There's always those teams that everybody like hates. You either love or you hate. And I grew up a huge Notre Dame fan. I'm a huge college football fan. It's just a part of who our family is, our identity. People can knock it. Cool. I didn't go there. Whatever. I could care less, right? I'm not going to defend it. But it's a part of who I am, because it's a deep bond with my family, and my father in particular, who's now older. And we went to, like, Notre Dame had a great season this year. Incredible game against Clemson under the lights. Won at the last second, or went into overtime and then won in overtime. That's like one of the all-time greatest games at that stadium. Interestingly, I was there. What's up?
This year?
Yeah.
Yeah, the game that we have to say that Trevor Lawrence didn't play that game. Is that it?
Yep.
Okay.
Why? I'm tearing up and you're taking his moment down. Are you kidding me right now?
It's okay.
I'm emotional. This is what I'm here for.
Yeah, okay.
It's facts.
Bianca, the thing is, I'm used to the trolls. It's all good. People love to hate. It's all good. It's all good. You know what? LeBron was tweeting my man Kyron Williams. I mean, Notre Dame's got talent. People are using these dated arguments. Notre Dame's slow and Trevor, whatever. It was still a huge win. Ask anybody the last time they beat Clemson in the regular season. I think it was like 46 games before. So whatever. But in 2007, there was a game that's still defined as, it wasn't like the greatest season. I mean, they finished like top 10, but Notre Dame was playing UCLA, and they were favored to win. They were losing, bottom line. They had to punt the ball away with under like 2.5 minutes to go. My dad and I were on the 20-yard line on the right side of the field, if you're facing the field. And I was like, Dad, you can't give up. Like, I know they're going to win. I know they're going to win. And sure enough, like, they held them 3 and out. Notre Dame gets the ball back, no timeouts, 50 seconds to go. They end up winning the game. Brady Quinn threw it to Jeff Samardzija, who ended up playing Major League Baseball as a pitcher. He catches the ball. He shakes one defender, scores in the end zone, like right in front of us. And it's just a pure sports moment for me, talking about like NFT yesterday and others, because it's just everything that it's about for me. You know, I was there bonding with a parent. It's something I'll remember forever. Again, if you could digitize that, that would be something I would carry with me forever and ever, because it's just so special to us, right? And it didn't even matter that wasn't them winning the championship. It's just an incredible moment, and you can't like script those moments, right? That's what makes sports versus say music or, you know, watching a film, whatever it is. It's my pure
opinion. So I obviously, like, you can clearly tell I'm like tearing up and getting emotional, because for me, right, like, so I went to Trinity College in Connecticut, but my dad went to Yale and he played football there. So the game in our house is very big. And like, that's for us, right? Like, we only know the game as the Harvard-Yale game. Yeah. And you make a deal out of it every time it's in New Haven. My sister also went to Yale. And because my dad played there, there's such an emotional connection. Like, I have Yale. I was even wearing my Yale sweatshirt earlier. Like, I think I have more Yale gear than I do my own college. But because of that emotional tie, you know, I love that when we ask you what your pure sport moment is, you bring up the fandom side and your own experience. How important do you think it is that when people talk about, you know, being an athlete in sports, that they also talk about this side of being a fan, about the emotional connection that comes with that?
I think it's really big. I mean, even look at everything that's happening with the explosion of leagues like NWSL and WNBA, and hearing athletes that are at the top of their sport, especially men, and saying, hey, you know, X-athlete she's the best technician at what she does. Like, you know, there's no bones about this. There's no conversation to have. Like, this is the best ball handler, or this is X or Y. And you cannot, I'm sorry, like, I don't care what anybody says, Dom, like, you can't be an athlete and not be a fan ultimately to a certain degree. Fandom is an expression of who you are, whether you push it down or you let it come out. And it's that emotional tie. And other aspects of entertainment are absolutely emotional, right? Songs will bring back certain memories, of course, right? Smell can do the same thing of it as entertainment. But like watching a film, but there's just a special, deeper connection to your point that often comes with sports. And as you said, like, people will knock a Notre Dame fan in particular till the cows come home. It's like, oh, you didn't go there. Like, why does it matter? It's like, you don't understand. Yeah. Like, you don't understand. Like, I was born in a crib wearing a Notre Dame onesie and a Notre Dame football. Like, that is who I became. And I didn't choose that. That was given to me by somebody else. And that is special to me.
Yeah, I think I just didn't get that. Right? Like, for me, like, I just didn't get that. It's like, growing up, my family, it was not that important. The only memory I have is I thought about Donovan Bailey, is like trying to find my identity as a black man in Canada, and seeing Donovan Bailey like winning that gold medal. And I remember that moment, like, I ran into the street and just like ran 100 meters just like that. That was a moment for me. But I don't have that as a family value. And when you talked about that, I was like thinking about when I was actually studying in physical therapy in college. They were coming like to us and talking about like, hey, like, you know what? Like I went to the Olympics because of the physical therapy. I was a physical therapist like at the Olympics for this athlete, and I remember like as an athlete, like I was there like as a student athlete, and I was like, I don't care. Like I don't want to go like to the Olympic as a physical therapist. I want to be there as part of the Canadian like basketball team, and that's it. Like, and I actually quit on physical therapy because of not because of that, but like because of other stuff. And to your point, Bianca, just because you didn't know that about me, I was actually recruited by Yale, actually.
Come on!
I bailed on them. I think I was too young, and it was also like a love story. Like I didn't want to go away from my future wife, actually. So I actually end up like not going to Yale.
I'm still here for the family and the love stories that keep happening on this podcast today. I'm such a sucker for that. So, but no, I think you know, Anthony, it's funny that you talk about being a baby in the onesie, because my girlfriends always joke. They're like, okay, so your kid's gonna like come out of the womb with like a Yale onesie on, and I'm like, I'm not gonna pressure them, but you know, my best friend went to Cornell, and she has a photo of her in a Cornell onesie with a Cornell bear. She went to Cornell undergrad and now is at the law school. You know, how important, and Dom, kind of to your point with that family, you know, I don't sit here and think about that on a day-to-day basis of having that influence for my family. But Anthony, you know, how do you think that will impact the way that you talk about sports to your family, you know, to the people that you engage with on a daily basis? Like, you know, as you said, you didn't go to Notre Dame and people are like, they try and knock it off, but you're like, no, this is me. How important do you think it is that people, you know, keep with that? Because I just moved to Nashville, and SEC football, it's been my first exposure, even in COVID. And my God, I sit here going, yeah, I support Yale. And they're like, that's not one of our teams. So how do you think that is?
I went to the national title game in 2012, and I'll never forget the horror of the Alabama chants of SEC. SEC. I'm like, wait, I don't get it. You're up 28 points and you're chanting SEC?
Right.
Anyway, well, here's a good way to answer that. So I forget who I was talking to. It was like, you know, a friend or somebody who knew me fairly well. And we were talking about this expression of fandom and my love for Notre Dame football in particular. And I was like, my children know. I was like, my daughter knows. And they're like, and it was something specific. Like, and I said, like, oh, you know, if you, they called my bluff on it. And I was like, oh, you want to call my bluff? Let's do it. And literally, like, out of the blue, called her up and I said, what are Daddy's two favorite loves in the world? And she was like a 2-year-old. She knew the answer. I mean, I think the reality is that it's often sports is a way that you can naturally relate. And you can't, your passions are your passions. And I think what's amazing and awesome about where the world is in 2021, especially coming off the pandemic, is you talked about, Dom, being artistic and these other aspects of who you are. I later in my life came to find out more about who I am outside of sports as an athlete, and I wish I had discovered those earlier. Deep aspects of creativity, passions that lie elsewhere. It's all on me. Like I just didn't want to play an instrument. I didn't want to do other things. But we live in a world where it's okay more and more, right? We have a long way to go. But to not only be who you want to be, but to express that and find avenues to learn about it and to identify. And I joke about being ahead of my time. Like, I didn't even realize, I honestly can't even tell you why I loved the Pacers and Reggie Miller. It's not like I was an elite basketball player or the NBA was my favorite sport. I watched everything, but there was something clearly. I mean, and I identified actually by Reggie, like, that was my handle, our Pacers. And the way he played, and to your point, I think it helps you to discover who you are, and that emotion, that passion are keys to who you are as an individual. So I think you can honestly often find out a lot about people based, Bianca, on what their fandom is. Now, it might just be that they love that sport, but it's the layer, right? It's the gateway to who that individual is in a lot of ways, often, and I think it's telling. And then there's just that full emotional piece. And for me, like Yale and your family and your dad playing there, it's just like, it's who I am. It's who I am. It's a part of me.
I think you're right.
Right? And that part's important. You know?
I think you're right about it. Because if you ask my kids, okay, because it's funny because my kids are different than me, okay? It's just like, but I'm watching a lot of basketball like at home because I love basketball. So they always sit with me and say, "Who you picking? Who's your team today?" And I always say to them like, "I don't have a team," and they're like, "Come on!" I just don't have a team. I'm just like I love watching sports, and I think from what you just said about personality and fandom and stuff like that, that's actually me. That's actually, and you know a bit about pure instinct and the pure movement. That's actually me. Like I'm actually about like, how can I find like the purity in sport? And that might be like something that I've actually not struggled with, but like when I was like trying to build this like movement and that culture about sport, it's about like, for me, it was always about that purity of sport. So, and for me, like the sports is much more than just a team and stuff like that. And it's about like that, like, can you just enjoy the sport for itself? So, and that's kind of bizarre because my kids, if you ask them like, what's your daddy's like team, they're gonna say like, oh, pure instinct, like, because like the only gear I actually wear is the pure instinct brand. That's it. So I think it's funny. You talk about like the NFT, and that's one of the questions actually that we actually ask for everyone now. And you barely answer it like right away with the Notre Dame, but let's say we go with your NFT moment and also the NFT moment, let's say professional sports, okay? Because like for me, like Notre Dame, I don't know, like the only thing I know about Notre Dame is Corey Mays that was like on our podcast recently, and I think the guy that movie like Rudy or something like that, is that it, Rudy?
Yeah, Rudy.
Yeah, that's Notre Dame for me. And Fighting Irish, I know like Fighting Irish stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, come on, man. Notre Dame de Lac is French. How can you not like Notre Dame? Come on, man.
I don't know.
You're sitting here saying,
I'm not that big on football. I'm not that big on. I'm not an American. I'm not that big on football. I was raised on hockey and basketball. That's it. So for me, football is just like, all right. I don't get the college thing in football. So that's I'm Canadian. So, but what is your NFT as an athlete? There's one moment that you say, hey, I wish we had like 100 cameras, like filming all angles, and at the end of this like game or event, we have like this moment like given to me as my NFT moment, my token that I can keep all my life.
You want me to tell you?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but here's the thing, like it's not going to be what you expect. And again, I think that's interesting about what it means to be an athlete. Maybe somebody could look at it and say, well, no wonder he's not Serena Williams, right? But flag football, I love flag football. And I did something I wasn't supposed to. I was playing a flag football game when I was a senior, and I had I just put everything together on the track. Like I was balling. Like, oh man, I was gonna have an amazing season. Anyways, playing a flag football game, and I popped my ACL, but I didn't know it. I just knew it hurt. I had pivoted left to right, and I popped it. So this was like the semi-finals of the playoffs, and I had sat out the whole second half, and I came in for the last drive, and I threw the winning touchdown, and then I ran in the extra point. And honestly, I'm not going to lie to you, of all the athletic achievements I have, for whatever reason, like there was an emotional connection to how badly I wanted to win that game, even though it didn't matter in the scheme of anything. Who cares? Cool. You got like a t-shirt, for
how old were you?
Girls. 22, 21.
Oh, wow.
But that was a pure moment. That was a pure moment because I did not know it tore my ACL and still ran in the extra point. But just, again, it's that defining moment of just overcoming something and knowing that, you can take that next step and do it. I make it sound like I have like the most injury-riddled like history as an athlete ever. And the hilarious part is I've only had like 3 injuries, 2 torn ACLs and falling on a track once. But I don't know. I guess that's like I've torn both. That's like one of my icebreakers. Nelly from back in the day when he actually was a good rapper, like pop rapper, has this great line about how he's the most balling, like rapper who only has no ACLs or like. So that's always like one of my jokes is I have 3 Achilles tendons and no ACLs.
Hey, what about your NFT moment as a like professional like sports like event like, are you like a basketball? Are we going basketball or football or tennis or where are we going?
Yeah, I love so many sports. Like I told you, I'm kind of a ride or die college football person, but I know you don't love American football, so I'll
No,
take it away
sorry.
from there. But um, I, you know, I'm trying to think like Tiger Woods winning the Masters. Honestly, that's and I'm not even like a huge golf fan. I mean, for me, it's the NFT moments are just the moments when just that like top tier breakthrough, and that's what I love about sports is that spontaneity of that moment. I mean, truthfully, if I was telling you the truth, it would be 1993 when Notre Dame beat Florida State in the game of the century in South Bend's last end zone. Charlie Ward was throwing the ball into the end zone. Notre Dame batted it down and won the game and should have won the national title. That's my NFT moment, but I didn't want to bore you. So
No, you just said that like a school kid who stole candy from like the teacher's jar. You were like, but I'm still gonna do it. I'm gonna just let you know that I know.
Listen. I cried in the closet in 1989 when I was 6 years old because they lost to Miami the year after winning the national title. 6 years old, I was crying in the closet because I said, like, I just never am going to watch another game. Like, I'm not joking to you when I tell you it is who I am. And it's hilarious because, like, I will meet people that want to bat that down, to your point, whether they've gone there or otherwise. And they very quickly understand, like, first of all, this cat knows what he's talking about. And that's what I mean. It doesn't matter what it is. It's about it's the emotion that defines it. And I think like purest sports moment and what you're talking about, like pure instinct and as a sport, what I've come to realize is, especially if you're not going to be one of the few chosen people or people that break through and win at the most elite level, that's the beauty of sports, right? Every medium of expression has a way to help define you. And it's the same thing with music and art and everything else. And I think often what's happened over eternity, going back to like, the Romans and throwing people into the Colosseum and gladiators, sport has always been in Olympics. It has always been a part of what we do, but it's been put in this lane of just pure competition. And it's true, but it's also a vehicle of expression and who you are and defining who you are and helping to create that individual. And I think it needs to be, which is where we are today, we're crossing over. And it's looked at it from more of that aspect. And I think that that's the reality of what makes sports pure, right? That moment when you're able to let go and just be who you are and detach yourself maybe from the worries of the world or what you're doing, or know that like that was the best you could be in that moment, right? And sport is no different than playing a guitar at that perfect moment and hitting the string the right way or the right octave or whatever it is. That's what I think.
On that purity, I think we're gonna stop the podcast with one last thing for you, Anthony, today, and it's gonna be our first one ever on the Purest Sports Moment. Can you finish this podcast with the Fighting Irish Chant Club or like Fight Club? Do you like song or something like that? There's something about it.
Is that like a question? If I know every word, of course I do. You want me to sing it? I don't think anybody wants to hear me sing.
Yeah, I want to see. I want to hear it.
Sure. Cheer, cheer for old Notre Dame. Wake up the echoes cheering her name. Send a volley cheer on high. Shake down the thunder from the sky. What though the odds be great or small, old Notre Dame will win overall, while her loyal sons are marching onward to victory.
That's perfect.
Beautiful.
Tell me you sing that to your daughters.
It's their lullaby, Dom. It's their lullaby.
At night.
It's actually one of our lullabies. Yes, it's true.
I knew it.
Beautiful. We love it.
Dude. Yeah, I mean, come on. It's got to be, right?
Thanks so much, Anthony.
You're welcome. Have a good one. Thanks, Bianca.
Thanks, Anthony.
So we're gonna have